Welcome everyone to the Wake Up Call channel. Over the years, I've talked about how everything they do is about conditioning. It's not about making money. And we're hearing stories now about major retailers backtracking on self-checkout. This has been the plan since the get-go. There was never a plan for the long-term effects of self-checkout to be self-checkout. This was to condition people into going from checking out at a store, the routine of putting everything on the rack, letting somebody ring it all up, putting your credit card in, bagging everything. It was a process to go to a store, make the purchases, and leave. Not a complicated process, but a process nonetheless. They brought in the self-checkouts, like I've talked about with the phones. The transition of the phone is to get inside your body. So what you've been seeing is this wearable technology, right? You've been seeing the phones on the wrist, the Apple Watches. Now we're seeing the Apple lenses. This is all to condition you into getting used to this under the skin. They aren't going to go from a phone in your hand to it under your skin without going to the in-betweens, right? The wearable technology is the in-between. The self-checkout is the in-between. So what we're hearing now is the media is coming out and talking about how all these companies have invested so much money into self-checkout machines when, simple fact of the matter is they've not invested really any money, and it's not about making money. They've put it out there at Walmart, at certain big retailers to condition you into what Amazon has already shown us with biometrics eventually being the way to check in and check out. But let's start here with the removal of self-checkout machines. And I want you to listen to this piece because the propaganda, people hear this stuff and they don't read between the lines. Listen between the lines of trying to find a fine balance. Some people are upset that they're going to get rid of self-checkouts because they don't want to go back to waiting in line. But other people, are upset about self-checkouts because sometimes a cashier has to come, they have to wait, it's a longer process. So what's the answer to all of this? And of course, the answer eventually will be the mark of the beast. But let's start with this. Look at this propaganda and how they're manipulating people into, well, we got to come up with a solution because neither one's working. The regular checkout doesn't work, it's too long, and the self-checkout is now showing that it's too complicated as well.
Do it yourself. That's the idea behind self-checkout lanes. A way to skip the pleasantries and skate out of the store quickly.
Super fast, easy, convenient.
But more and more stores are now hitting cancel on those self-checkout machines.
Item canceled.
Dollar General says it has pulled self-checkout from about 12,000 stores, and Five Below hoping to eliminate self-checkout options in its highest risk locations. Both companies saying theft is the main reason, as 15% of users confess to purposely stealing at the self-checkout lane.
Entering in a cheaper type of produce when they're scanning their groceries, or just pretending to scan something and just bagging it anyway. It's one area where retailers are noticing too much theft.
Then there's the user experience.
For shoppers, self-checkout is supposed to offer the convenience of just scanning and then going. But sometimes it ends up being more trouble than it's worth.
Please wait for assistance.
Definitely where I have to wait for someone to come in and fix it, and it just waste of time.
The solution? Bringing sales associates back.
Is more profitable for the retailer to pay employees to manage checkout than it is to support the machines where they're probably getting less than accurate checkouts from consumers.
Self-checkout isn't going away, though. It's on the rise at grocery stores, making up 44% of transactions last year.
If your store decided to take out all the self-checkout lanes and put in regular lanes,
I'd be really disappointed.
A battle of humans versus machines playing out in the checkout line. Brian Chung, NBC News, New York.
So what you saw right there was them using mind control to tell the audience out there that we need to find something that's better, a better solution, something faster, right? Faster, convenient. These are terms and things that they use to manipulate people into the technology that they want to have in place for more control. And of course, this ties into the mark of the beast, being able to buy or sell and not being able to buy or sell without having the actual mark. So for those of you that don't understand where this is going, you've probably heard about a lot of this biometric data. If you haven't heard, these are things like being able to pay with your eyes, being able to pay with your palm, right? Lots of credit card companies, MasterCard specifically, has rolled out their biometric checkout program in places like Poland. Okay, so what this is for anybody out there that doesn't understand, instead of going to the register and doing tap to pay, which is another transition I've talked about when that came out a couple of years ago or 10 years ago, whatever it is now, The tap to pay was the first transition from sticking the credit card, or swiping the credit card, I should say. It went from swipe to sticking the credit card in, right, with the chip, to tapping. Okay, now it's the hand. You see how it's a transition from swiping the card to inserting the chip of the card in the machine, to tapping with the card to the palm, right? Or using biometrics with the eyes. At the end of the day, what this all leads to is walking in and out of the store without actually having to process a payment. Now, for a lot of people out there, it sounds crazy to hear this, but they're conditioning you into it. So when it's here, you're not even going to remember thinking that it was a crazy notion when you're hearing it right now. You're going to be conditioned into it like it's riding a bicycle, like it's no big deal, like the transition is seamless, right? What it is a lot like the Amazon Go store. So for those of you that don't know the Amazon Go store, which they've pulled back on, was designed as another mechanism to see how many people would be on board, where you could walk into a store, as long as you had an Amazon account, it was an Amazon store, you could pick up whatever you wanted off of the shelves and walk out of the store with it. No checkout whatsoever. Literally walk in, grab a can of soup, grab a soda, grab a water, and walk right out. And Amazon will charge you automatically. They were using camera surveillance for that.
4 years ago, we started to wonder, what would shopping look like if you could walk into a store, grab what you want, and just go? What if we could weave the most advanced machine learning, computer vision, and AI into the very fabric of a store, so you never have to wait in line? No lines, no checkouts, no registers. Welcome to Amazon Go. Use the Amazon Go app to enter. Then put away your phone and start shopping. It's really that simple. Take whatever you like. Anything you pick up is automatically added to your virtual cart. If you change your mind about that cupcake, just put it back. Our technology will update your virtual cart automatically. So, how does it work? We used computer vision, deep learning algorithms, and sensor fusion, much like you'd find in self-driving cars. We call it Just Walk Out technology. Once you've got everything you want, you can just go. When you leave, our Just Walk Out technology adds up your virtual cart and charges your Amazon account. Your receipt is sent straight to the app, and you can keep going. Amazon Go. No lines, no checkout. No, seriously.
But what they're going to use in the future is something a lot like the Amazon Go store. Just the biometrics is going to be embedded in your genetic code. I've talked about this over the years, and a lot of people don't understand it. They don't understand this conditioning that's going on with cryptocurrency and blockchain. Blockchain, with your digital ID and all this stuff, is going to be embedded in your genetics. That's part of the conditioning you've heard over the years about being hacked, right? Oh my goodness, my private personal information has been hacked. Are you at risk of your identity being stolen? All of this stuff has been conditioning to get you on board with eventually the digital ID and all of this stuff being biometrically embedded in you. Now they'll tell you it's seamless. You'll hear this now and you'll say, nobody's going to be on board. Nobody's going to get a chip, a chip put into their bodies, inoculated into them, however they plan on doing it. But what a lot of people don't realize is they just did a trial run on that, because it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, or should I say, it's as easy as injecting it directly into you permanently and having nanotechnology underneath your skin, which of course would allow you to walk in and out of stores without paying for anything. And they're going to market this as easy, as, saves everybody money and time. Everybody will be on board. And of course, I believe that this biometric technology and the digital ID ties into and is the mark of the beast. Now, a lot of people have difference of opinion on that, but what we're seeing right now is the transition into that. So let's just rewind here what I just talked to you about and just showed you, just so it can resonate and you can start to understand it. Because a lot of people don't understand the stuff. They hear biometrics, they roll their eyes, or they're just like, oh, that sounds boring, I'm not interested. The palm payments, the self-checkout. Think about how conditioned people are now with the self-checkout, right? When the self-checkout first came out, everybody was like, what is this? Whoa, I don't know about that. I don't want to be on board with it. Now it's just like riding your bicycle, right? You see them at every store. You're not in shock anymore. That's how they desensitize you. They roll it out. They watch how you react to it. They know over time you'll be desensitized to it and you'll accept it. Well, the ultimate plan wasn't to have people self-check out by going up to a register and bagging their own stuff and using a credit card. The ultimate goal is to have this stuff embedded in you so you could go into these places and walk out seamlessly without ever even having to do a transaction. You are the transaction. So the thing that we've seen, in addition to them removing the self-checkout, like I mentioned, is the biometric payments, paying with your eyes or paying with your palm. Another thing that Amazon has normalized and a lot of the credit card companies are normalizing. They've gone quick. It seems like the tap to pay just came out. But I remember when the tap to pay came out and everybody was going, whoa, we're getting closer to the mark, right? And the same thing when the credit card came out, everybody felt that way too. Everybody felt that way about the credit card. They were saying that the credit card was tied into the mark of the beast. Now, from the transition to the credit card, to the chip on the card, to the tap to pay, a long period of time went from the credit card to the chip. But a quick period of time has gone from the chip in the card to the tap on the card to the palm payment. You could see how fast they're ramping this up. You know, that was a transition from the 80s all the way to like the 2010s where they started with the chip in the card. So you're talking 30 plus years. Now we're at a point where it's like a 2-year window, a 1-year window of quickly getting this stuff out there, showing you this stuff, then pulling it back and telling you that they have a better solution. That's what it's about. Conditioning you, right? They're not waiting as long for lots of reasons. Not because, you know, they've had the technology in place. They're not inventing the new technology. It's about conditioning you into accepting the tech. So they're going faster now because technology is so rampant and people are so dumbed down. They don't have to wait as long as they used to have to wait. That's part of the data that they look at. They look at how people respond to this stuff. They look at what people are going and willingly doing. How many people are using the self-checkouts? How many people are okay with the palm payment and the biometric eye payment? And people are okay with it. They are okay with it because in their mind, they're in a rush to get nowhere. Oh, it's a quicker checkout. It's less of a hassle. You don't have to interact with another human being because we know this day and age, most of the Gen Zers or whatever they're called can't even interact with other humans. It's a stressful day for them if they have to say hello to someone at the cashier. So these are all things that they're doing to manipulate and market it to people that it's better for them and in their best interest. So the propaganda you saw in the news is just the beginning, where they pull back now on self-checkouts. They've known all along that self-checkouts was never the actual answer, but they knew that they had to go from point A to point B without going from point A to point Z. And that's what all these little things are in the middle. All these things are transitions. They're transitional, okay? Think about where we're going with the phone and getting the phone embedded in you, right? And I've talked about the carbon footprint. All of these types of iFit technologies that they've released that tell you how many steps you take and how many calories you burn is all been rolled out to condition you into not going, wow, wait a minute, I don't want this technology. I don't want something tracking my footsteps. This is crazy. This is insane. Whereas over time, people are like, well, I need to exercise. I might as well get the iFit. I'll track how many steps I take. It'll be like a little interactive game. And then I'll figure out how many calories I burn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, without realizing what's monitoring you, how it's tracking you, just giving up your freedoms to the technology, right? And then at the end of the day, when we have a digital ID and all that stuff is implemented with it, nobody will even realize that it's the government who's tracking and monitoring you, because most people out there have been conditioned into saying to themselves, oh, I'm not doing anything bad. I don't care what the government does or watches, because they don't realize that eventually when they start imprisoning everybody with the carbon footprint, that it doesn't matter what your political stance is now versus 20 years from now, they will turn on you because you're not going to like what they eventually do to you. You're not going to like enslavement. You're not going to like being told where you can and cannot go. Right now, they're manipulating people with all this stuff with politics and getting people on board and getting people to think that we're all crazy as they pass these bills that allow them to have all this technology rule over all of us, right? I've talked about this with the AI, how they've, just the fact that they're allowing AI to exist and at the same time telling us what AI could eventually do to all of us, how AI could wipe out humanity, how AI is dangerous, how AI is going to cost humans jobs. Then they tell you, well, we need to get rules in place instead of just going, well, just get rid of it. What purpose does it serve? Well, for modern medicine in the future. What? No, thank you. No, thank you. We don't need anything to rule above us or anything that could affect our lives or our livelihoods. But they convince people. without people even realizing it, to be on board and just to accept AI. So, you got to accept AI because everybody needs to see deep fakes of Tom Cruise and Keanu Reeves, right? So we need deep fakes and we need AI. So we have to accept it in our society. So it's the same stuff with things like this. We should have pushed back a long time ago, even just the credit card, right? A lot of people believe we shouldn't even allow the credit card to come into play, and I agree. We should have just stayed with cash. When people go, oh, well, yeah. Well, yeah, when you look at the world the way it is now, but fine, you want to say the credit card was necessary? Was the tap to pay necessary? Was the chip in the card necessary? How much time does anyone save with the chip in the card? How many times do you get a chip reads error thing pop up when you stick the chip in, right? It's no faster than swiping the actual card, right? They just convince you that it's faster and more convenient, right? As if, oh man, you swipe, it doesn't swipe right. Right? Well, then punch it in manually. Oh, that's too long, right? So these are all things that they're doing to condition. The latest is the removal of the self-checkout. And they're looking for the solution. They claim, they already know the solution. They're going to get everybody on board with something along the lines to start with the Amazon Go type of store where they could use surveillance, right? The Amazon Go store is surveillance over you. The cameras are watching what you're picking up, putting down. Then they'll tell you that, well, that's not working because the cameras are missing some stuff and some people are taking stuff and the camera's not getting it. So we need, so it's technically stealing. So we need more. And then you get hit with the biometrics where everything's embedded in you and everything is digitally enhanced. And it's enhanced through your genetic code. So keep an eye on these stories. That's what I think of when I see stuff like this. And that's why I do videos on it because that's the way that my brain works. If your brain doesn't work that way, that's perfectly fine. But as I've mentioned a million times, the news is here to condition and program us. So every single thing out there is there for a reason. If you understand the end game, then you read all this stuff in between, right? If you understand the end game is the mark of the beast, which most Christians should, and if you understand the mark of the beast with technology and mixing iron and clay, then you look at stuff like this and you see how psychologically they can convince people. Because like I've said in previous videos, when I was young, I used to say, how in the world could somebody willingly take the mark of the beast? How could somebody sign up? How could people not say no? And then you start to see how people's behaviors have changed, right? Couldn't you see people now, especially these unhinged people that we live among, holding up a middle finger to God on Judgment Day? I could, right? You can't see how people could go along with this via technology, get dumbed into this, thinking it's convenient, or even with the way sarcasm is now, into thinking, oh, that's not the real mark of the beast, even if it was called the mark of the beast, even if Nike rolled it out. They're like, Nike, now selling the mark of the beast. Couldn't you see people going, oh, they're just trolling Christians and going and getting the mark of the beast? I could. I could see that honestly happening, and I never could have seen that when I was younger. So I keep an eye on all these stories. I try to put it out there so people can see themselves. Maybe you don't see the same things that I do, but hey, I'll put it out there for people to see, make your own judgments on it, make your own choices. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you as always, and your families.